for the dealers that I know, thanks for showing up. And for those of you I haven't met yet, welcome and hope you learn a lot.
Well, I appreciate it. Like I say, Kevin and I have known each other for a long time. Being with Toro, we both were terminated. So, and then we're looking for another place to work. So anyway, no, that's not true at all. So yeah, it was fun to see Kevin when I was down in Raleigh down there. We kind of got talking about this. And again, Lance, you guys have been working with us some already. You guys have. So kind of made sense to say, hey, let's just get everybody on a Zoom meeting and let's kind of go through some basics. And Kevin and I's goal is if you guys like what we're going to do today, then we're going to do two more of these. I'm going to do one today. I'm just going to focus on the numbers side of the business in service, parts, sales, those things. So it's kind of more of let's say a owner, GM-ish kind of level. Service managers, parts managers can get out of it. If we want to do another one, and I hope we do because I'm looking forward to it, then I want to do that one on really on your people by department and what do we need to do and how do we get more performance out of them. I got some cool tools I'm going to share with you on that. And then if you still want more because you just can't stand not having pain in your life, then I want to focus on sales and marketing kind of on the last one. So anyways, I told Kevin, let's see if the dogs eat the food on the first one. If they do, we'll bring back a different dish and go that way. So anyway, I'm excited to have you guys on here. Lance, you guys have been on our meetings before. I like to try to keep this stuff pretty open. If you've got a camera, don't be embarrassed. Click your camera off. Like I say, I'm here to kind of engage in conversations with you guys. Most of you have met me before in some fashion at an LS meeting or something like that. So I've been doing this a little over 40 years now. I was telling Kevin, my daughter, Sarah, many of you met her. She spoke at meetings before too, as well as Jeff Blackton, who's my senior advisor. They basically run the company anymore. So I told Kevin I work on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, and I take off Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. So got 71. I feel like I've earned the right to do that. But I love working with dealers. This has been my passion for 40 years. And again, one of the things that I try to do with dealers is just get dealers to understand, number one, the business is all about numbers. There is nothing in your dealership that can't be fixed if you understand what the numbers should be. And I always tell dealers, numbers are truth tellers. Right? They are just what they are. And again, sure, you can manipulate them to do different things, but again, it's the numbers tell the story, whether it's in service, parts, or sales. It's like you guys, your vehicles. How many of you in your truck, if you have a truck that you drive, how many have gauges instead of idiot lights in your truck? Anybody? Thumbs up? Okay, my truck, I got a Chevy truck and mine's got gauges in it. The lights are fine, but I like to see the gauges. I grew up on a farm. Gauges mean something to me. To do it wouldn't mean anything to my wife. If the oil pressure dropped to zero, she would think that that's fine. We know we need no oil in it. Our thing is to happen. But if as my youngest daughter said, the little Aladdin lamp is on in my car, what should I do? And I had to think for just a moment what the little Aladdin lamp was. And then I said, hon, pull it over and shut the engine off now. A low oil pressure. So anyway, but to me, numbers are really everything. And so as we kind of look at the dealership, I always tell people, I always like to kind of start in the shop. I'm a service guy myself, and we do a ton of service training, and I've worked in a lot of shops helping dealers turn their shops around. But to me, the shop is kind of the backbone of the dealership. And so when we think about issues, problems, or concerns in a dealership, normally the shop is where a lot of things happen. And again, no blame on the shop, but the shop is probably one of the tougher areas in the dealership for the employees there, especially if you happen to be a service manager, service writer, because nobody comes to the shop happy. Would you all agree? So if I'm coming to your shop, it's because there's a problem, right? And I know there's a problem because I was just getting ready to use my equipment, Lance, and it didn't work. So the problem never happens when you're not using the equipment, it's when you're getting ready to use it. So as we think about numbers in the shop, as we're thinking about what we want to try to do, and again, as I work with dealers, I tell dealers what we're always trying to do in a dealership is to create balance. Okay, and balance in my world is I want about 60% of the revenue for the dealership coming out of the sales department, about 25% of the revenue for the dealership coming out of the parts department, and I expect the service department to generate about 15% of my total revenue. So I would encourage you guys again to think about those numbers. So 60% of your revenue should be coming out of your dealership should be sales related. 25% of the revenue coming out of your dealerships should be parts related. And 15% should be coming out of your dealerships that is service related. And so again, and the easiest way to determine this is just to go to your 2024 income statement and take your total sales and divide it by your whole goods sales and see what your total sales were divide that by your total whole goods sales, and it'll tell you what percentage of your business is whole goods. Do the same thing for part sales. It'll tell you what percentage in 2024 your business was of parts. And again, do it in the service side of it. It's going to tell you what that is. But I'm looking for a 60, 25, 15 split. And again, if you don't know how to do this or struggling with it, Kevin knows how to do this. And I'm going to just encourage you, when I talk about numbers, Kevin knows every number that I'm talking about here. And so if you guys are comfortable, and I would just encourage you to be comfortable with it, but share your income statements with Kevin, and Kevin can walk through and see where you're at. And Kevin, if Kevin has a question or whatever, Kevin can connect me and Kevin and you guys, and I can walk you through it. And that's just a part of my commitment to LS to do that. So that's one of the first things I want you to do. I will tell you where most dealerships that we work with at. We've got about 300 dealerships. Like Lance is a part of our dealer success groups. We got about 300 dealerships we work with in the US and Canada. And most of the dealers we start with, they're about 83% of their revenue is coming out of sales. They've got about 20%, I'm sorry, they've got about 12% of it coming out of parts, and the remainder of it's coming out of service. And what would be wrong with that? Why would it be a bad idea, Ashton, to have more of your revenue coming out of the sales side of the business than, say, parts or service? What would be the fundamental problem with that, Ashton? I'll get you unmuted there real quick.
You hear me?
I sure can. Thanks, Ashton. So what would be the problem with that?
Say if you had sales go down or it wasn't a good time for sales, you'd probably be in a big picture.
There you go. That is just as simple as what it is, right? If we're in balance, right, then everything starts to work. And give you an example. If you got a piece of paper in front of you, just do this little exercise for me. Just, Ashton, to prove your point here. So let's say that I did $1 million worth of total sales for the year. I'm going to keep our numbers simple. I'm in Missouri. We keep our numbers simple. So if I did $1 million worth of total sales, okay, and 60% of them were coming out of, that'd be SAG, but out of whole goods, that would be 600,000, right? So 60% of $1 million is 600,000. And let's say, Ashton, what's your average gross profit margin, Ashton, on your whole goods?
About 12%, 10 to 12%.
Okay, so let's just say 12%, right? So out of the $600,000, if your margin's 12%, Ashton, you would have $72,000 worth of gross profit, right? Okay, so you'd have $72,000 worth of gross profit. All right, if 25% is coming out of your parts department, 25% of $1 million is $250,000. Okay, so in the business that you guys are in, I would expect your average gross profit margin to not be less than 40%. We'll talk about that in a little bit more. So Ashton, if 40% of your, I'm sorry, if $250,000 of that million came out of the parts department and my margin was at 40%, I'd have about $100,000 worth of gross profit, right? 40% of $250,000 is $100,000. So the parts department would have generated me $100,000 worth of gross profit, Ashton. And that would mean that out of the $600,000 and the $250,000, there's $150,000 left that would come out of the service department. That would make our total million, 15% out of service. And on the average, your margin in service should be about 50%. By the time I pay my technicians and my management team, I should have about a 50% gross profit margin out of service. So then that would be, if I had $150,000 there, Ashton, that would be $75,000 worth of gross profit out of service. So I want you to think about this for a second. Ashton, to your exact point, if I've got my dealership in balance and I don't have any sales in 1 year, right? My sales generated me, if I'm using $1 million as my number, $72,000 worth of gross profit. My parts generates me $100,000 worth of gross profit, and my service department should generate me $75,000 worth of gross profit. So if I happen to have a terrible sales year, Ashton, I've still got parts and service that can help me carry the load, because you're never going to not sell anything. Okay. The other thing that I always find fascinating on this is when you look at the time and energy it takes to sell $600,000 worth of whole goods, how many people, Ashton, would it take to sell $600,000 worth of whole goods?
How many people?
Yeah. I got to unload it from a truck. I got to do a PDI on it. We run it through service, right? Okay, then it gets sold. Then we got to do a delivery on it. So I got probably 2 or 3 people involved in selling a tractor somewhere along the line. Okay, so that $72,000, it takes me, in the best case scenario, Ashton, it takes me 2 people to make $600,000 in sales. How many people in parts does it take to generate $250,000 worth of part sales? One. Okay, one parts person in the business you're in should be able to handle $350,000 to $400,000 worth of part sales. So it only takes me one to do that, and one technician will generate you easily $150,000 worth of labor sales if your shop's right. So it takes me twice as many people in the whole goods side to make $72,000 than it does on the other two sides. So I tell people whole goods is employee heavy. Now we want it because if I don't sell more tractors, Ashton, what will I not end up having? I won't end up having parts or service. So it is heavier, but I need it. It's kind of like it takes longer to plant a tree than it does to harvest fruit off of it. And sales is all about planting trees, planting fruit trees out there to do it with. So one of the things I would love for you guys to do is just to go back, look at your numbers for 2024 and kind of see where you're at and see if you're in balance. I had a person the other day who said, so what are you telling me, Bob? I'm out of balance, so I shouldn't sell as many tractors. And I go, no, we need to figure out a way to sell more parts and service. Don't sell less tractors. Let's focus our marketing on doing what? Selling more parts and more service. And that's relatively easy to do. So I want you to think about that. And again, if you don't know that number or you're not exactly sure how to get it, I would really encourage you just to open up your income statement, your year-end income statement to Kevin and let Kevin help you do the math on those things. So that's the first thing I tell people to do. Let's just figure out, are we in balance? Okay. If we're in balance, that's great. Then the next thing we need to do is say, okay, well, what are the numbers by department I should be focused on in my dealership? So in the service department, starting with there's really four things that we look at in service that we want to concentrate on to make sure that our service department is able to produce me 50% gross profit margin. So just best guess, what would be one thing that we should be looking at in service? Lance, what's one thing we should be looking at in service? One number. Get you unmuted there, Lance.
For the whole dealership?
No, just for the service department. So I'm just thinking, I'm going to break this down by department now. So in the service department, what's one thing we need to be focused on for a number?
Well, I'm going to hand that to Scott. He does that side of it.
All
He
right.
does the parts and service.
So Scott, you just got thrown under the bus, which is not unusual, Scott. I've seen this happen before with you two. So Scott, when you think about the shop,
A lot later.
okay, what's the most important thing in the service department, the most important number in the service department to have right?
I'd say billable labor.
Okay, before billable labor, how do we determine what the billable labor is going to be? Our labor rate, right? Okay, all right, so I tell dealerships, the most important number in your service department in the beginning is your labor rate. Okay, because if your labor rate's wrong, okay, then nothing else is going to work.
Right.
Okay, so then how do we determine what our labor rate should be? Should we call all the other dealers around us and ask them what their labor rate is? Lance, you're laughing, right? Why would that be a bad idea, Lance? And don't tell me, Lance, that's what you guys did.
No, we just raised it.
Okay, you just raised it. All right.
Yeah.
So I tell people again, when I hear dealers say, well, Bob, I'm in the middle of all of other dealers, and I tell people, I don't want you to be in the middle. I want you to be at the top, because what you're going to do is you're going to lead everybody up to where the labor rate actually becomes where it needs to be. Okay, because everybody, I call that pooling ignorance. When you call all your competitive dealers and ask what they're doing, all you're doing is you guys are settling to the lowest common denominator. I want to go to the local Ford dealer. I want to go to the local Chevy dealer. I want to go to the local truck dealer and say, what are you guys charging in your shop? That's where I need to be at, because our labor rate determines how much we can pay technicians, right? So a technician can be paid, an A-level technician, 30% of your posted labor rate. So if I got to pay a technician $50 an hour, I got to have a $150 hour posted labor, or actually effective labor rate, to make that happen. So when people say I can't afford technicians, I would go, well, gosh, Ashton, at your labor rate, you can't afford technicians, okay? You got to get your labor rate up, because your labor rate determines what you can pay a A-level technician, and it's 30% of the number. So you get your labor rate, but that's not really your real number, because the thing about a labor rate is what happens then, Scott, when you write jobs down or you do things like that. Well, that impacts your labor rate, right? So let's say that I'm at $150 an hour, but I write some work down, I write some jobs down. And by the way, every shop does this. I tell people, I've been doing service for 40 years. I don't care how good you get, there's going to be some stuff you got to write off. You can't charge somebody 12 hours to find an electrical fault. Would you agree?
Right.
Okay. Okay. I can't do that. So there's some things I got to write down, but I have my labor rate set up. So if I write things down, I still get to where I need to be. So I tell people the first thing you want to figure out is what's called your effective labor rate. So your labor rate is what you hope for. Okay. So Scott, it'd be like, this is what I really hope for. But I say, well, that's great. Hope is not a strategy. What's our real labor rate? So determine our effective labor rate. Okay, we take all of the billable hours we've done, all the dollars, Scott, that you said that you billed out. You take all of those, then you divide it by all the labor hours that you paid to have technicians be in your shop. So it's your total labor dollars sold divided by your total paid hours in the shop, and that gives you your effective labor rate. Okay, now that's the most important thing to know. We're not going to use that, by the way, Kevin and Dave, for our warranty work. You're going to be paying our posted labor rate. I want you to know that. Close your ears off this part of it. Right, there you go. Thank you very much. But that's really what I want to know. What's my effective labor rate? And that's a really important number to look at. So to get our effective labor rate, we take our total dollars that we billed out, we divide it by the total hours that we have paid technicians to produce labor. You divide those together, and that's going to give you your effective labor rate. Now, I will tell you, most of you guys are going to be 20% less on your effective than you are on your post. Okay, so 20% less. So when you say, gosh, Bob, we're billing $150 an hour, and I go, no, you're not. That's what you hope, but that ain't actually what's happening. Let's figure out really how much you are billing per hour. And that's one of the first things I would do in there. And again, it's an easy calculation. But again, if you have questions on it, Kevin will know how to do this. So let Kevin help you figure that out. So that's the first thing I want to do. The next thing I want to look at is what we call productivity. Okay, so how productive are my technicians in the shop? And productivity is simply how many hours did I pay a technician and how many hours were they actually on a work order? Okay, so let's say, Lance, I'm your technician and you're paying me to be there 8 hours a day. But when you run a productivity report out of your software, it says, well, Bob was there 8 hours, but he was only on a work order for 6 of those 8 hours. Okay, so from a productivity standpoint, right, I had 2 hours that I wasn't on a work order. Okay, so if I take my productivity, if I were on work orders for 6 hours, if I divided 6 by 8, it tells me that I'm 75% productive. Okay, so 25% of all my time, Lance, is being wasted doing something that's not producing any billable time for me. It will never be 100%. I want you to understand that. But 75% is a break-even number at best in a shop. I would expect productivity to be around 90% as an average. Okay, so that's what I'm looking for. I expect that when I'm looking at productivity, 90% of the time in my shop, my technicians are on work orders that are work orders I can bill time for, an internal, a warranty, or a customer pay. That's what it's going to be. So again, that's one of the other things I would look at. This is a gauge I look at in your shop when I'm working with shops. All right, the next one we're going to look at, again, is efficiency. Okay, so this is measuring how efficient a technician is. And so efficiency is here's how much time it took this technician, Scott, to do the job, and here's how much time I was actually to charge for the job. So if the job was 4 hours that I got to bill the customer for, Scott, and the technician took 4 hours to do it, they would be 100% efficient. Okay, so they had 4 hours, they got it done in 4 hours, they're 100% efficient. Would that be an A-level tech or a B-level tech? That's going to be a B-level tech. I expect my B-level techs to be between 85 and 100% efficient. Okay, so I want you to understand that. That's where I expect a B-level tech to be at. I expect an A-level tech to be 115 to 120% efficient. Okay, now let's talk about that for a second, because I had a person the other day go, well, Bob, how is that even possible? Well, it's possible because, Scott, we don't bill by the hour, we bill by the job, right? So in my shops that I consult with, we don't do things by the hour, we bill by the job. So if I put 4 hours down on a job, that's how much time I give a B-level tech to do that job. An A-level tech's going to do that job, Scott, in maybe 3.75 hours or 3.5 hours because they've done it 100 times before, right? It's kind of like the other day I was talking to a guy and he said, well, how much should I bill out for splitting a tractor? I said, they're all the same. I tell people if a tractor's got a cab on it and I'm going to split a tractor apart, I'm going to tell the customer it's going to be 20 hours to split the tractor with a cab on it and put it back together, not counting the work I'm going to do once it's split apart. So I just always use 20 hours for that job. Right. And they go like, well, how fast can an A-level tech do it? I go, probably in 18, but I'm still going to charge you 20 hours to do it because 20 hours is what it takes. If the tractor's 125 horse or less, if it's 125 horse or bigger, it's going to take longer than that. But it's 125 horse or less tractor in a shop that I consult with. It's going to be $20 or 20 hours. Take the cab off, split the tractor, put the tractor back together, put the cab back on for a B-level tech, not counting what work. If I'm going to replace the clutch or whatever, there might be another 2 or 3 hours involved with that because I got the tractor split apart. But I tell people, but that's how we do efficiency. So one of the things I try to get my shops to do is say, let's stop billing by the hour. And let's start billing by the job. Okay. So how do we know how to bill by the job? How do we do that? Because you guys say, well, gosh, Bob, I don't have a flat rate. Okay. Yes, you do. LS has a flat rate. How many of you are using LS's flat rate?
We do.
Okay. And we know that the flat rate isn't what we're going to use for time because the LS's time is going to be less than what we need. Would you agree, Scott?
Right. So
Okay.
what I do is I take whatever the labor rate is per hours, and then I times it by 25%, because that's realistically.
It is. And I would tell you again, LS, just like every other manufacturer, has a warranty time. And the warranty time, right, is not a bad time, but you have to take what you're doing is you're saying, look, when I file a warranty with LS, if I file a $1,000 warranty and they only pay me $800 back, I know their time is off by 20% of my time. And so, Scott, what you're doing is you're saying, I'm going to take their time, I'm going to add another 20 or 25% to it, and that's going to be the time I'm going to use if this equipment is in excellent to good condition. Right. I want you to understand something in a shop that you guys work in. This is not like a car shop or a truck shop. Every time you guys have a piece of equipment in, it comes in a different condition. In the shops that you guys have, there are 3 levels of condition a piece of equipment can come into. Excellent to good. Scott, that would be the warranty plus 25%. Good to fair, that would be warranty plus 50%. Okay. Fair to poor, Scott, that's warranty doubled. So if I take a piece of equipment that has been beat up, abused, rusted, corroded, and I'm going to need a plasma torch to take it apart, Scott, even though it may come apart faster, you irritated me because I had to get my torch out, and I'm just going to charge you for it. I tell people again, so in our shops, we have 3 levels, excellent to good, that's manufacturer's warranty, and Scott, you're exactly right, 20 to 25%. Good to fair, manufacturer's warranty plus 50%, fair to poor, manufacturer's warranty doubled. Okay, and that's what I'm going to charge customers. And I'm going to make money in my shop, and I'm not going to be ripping a customer off. So when people say, I don't have a flat rate guide, I go, yeah, you do. You're just not using the warranty guide with a multiplier on it. So that's a part of what you're doing from that standpoint. So efficiency, if I have a technician that's 115% efficient, what it says, Scott, is I told the customer it was going to be 15 hours because I took LS's warranty time and added 50% to it, right, which got me to 15 hours. But an A-level tech, because they've done this before, could probably get it done in 13 hours, right? And so all of a sudden, this technician now is 115 or 120% efficient. Make sense? How efficient are automobile technicians in dealerships? Anybody know what the average A-level tech efficiency is in an automotive dealership?
I would think it'd be 85, 90.
Times 100. An average auto tech, a good tech, is probably 160 to 170% efficient. Most A-level techs in an automotive dealership are billing out anywhere between 12 to 15 hours in an 8-hour day. Okay, that's what they're billing out. And they do that because of doing just exactly how I explained you to do what they do there. So again, your times when you're doing work is based upon a B-level tech. You add a multiplier when you have an A-level tech. And again, let's say that I don't have a way to figure out what this warranty, this flat rate's going to be because it's a complex job. Then I do bill by the hour. So let's say it took me 10 hours to do this, Scott, because I didn't really know how to charge for it. So then we did time and material. You guys all familiar with time and material? This is how much time it took. These are the parts I needed. It's called time and material billing. But so I didn't know how to flat rate this out. So I did time and material, but I know that Bob who's an A-level tech, right, took 10 hours to do it, right? So how much more would I add to the time on that job, Scott, if I know Bob typically is 20% over flat rate? So that 10-hour job now, I'm going to bill the customer what for it? 12 hours.
Yeah. Well,
Because I gave you my best tech, Scott, to do that job. I could have given you my worst tech and charged you 14 hours, okay? But I gave you my best tech, right? And I'm going to charge you 12 hours for it. So I tell people, if you have to do time and material, then you need to make an adjustment for it. So that's efficiency. And the last one is recovery. Recovery is how many hours did I pay people to be there versus how many hours did I bill out? How many hours did I bill out versus how many hours did I pay people to be there? What's your recovery rate? Okay. And again, I like to see that around 80%. I like for us to be recovering. Here's how many hours I pay technicians to be there. At the end of the month, here's how many hours we actually billed out. What was your recovery rate on that? And again, I like to see that at 80. So those are numbers that I would be looking at in the service department. So if you were to bring me in, I'd say, let's pull up your service reports and let's take a look at those numbers. Now, some of you guys' challenges is your software is not sophisticated enough to come up with these numbers. So you have to kind of do it on, there is new software coming out. It's AI, it's 100% AI. It will do all of this stuff for you. So there's some new stuff that's coming out. Are any of you guys playing around with AI right now in your dealerships? You guys, Lance, so we sent you guys out a bunch of stuff on how to use chat to do estimates and things like this. At some point, get with me and I can show you how to do it. But I will tell you there's a new software called Triton that's 100% AI for dealerships. It's built by dealers. It's coming out. It's incredible what it's going to be able to do. It can handle all this stuff for you. All you have to do is, and you talk to it, you don't type into it. So it's pretty cool stuff. So that's the service side of it. So again, that's the first thing. Numbers tell the story, right? And we look at our numbers. And again, if my productivity is off, let's say my productivity is I needed to be 90% or more, and it's only at 85%. Ashton, I would say, okay, well, what's keeping my technicians from being on work orders? Why aren't they clocked on? I'll give you an example. I was talking to a dealership last week, and he goes, my productivity rate's down. I go, well, how come your technicians aren't always on a work order? And he goes, well, they get done with their job, they clock off, then they go out and get their next job, come in, clean their bay up, and clock on to the next job. And I go, well, that's not how it works at a shop. In a shop, a technician doesn't clock off the job until they got the next job in. Okay, so I got a job, I finished it, I take it outside, I get my next job, I bring it in. Then I clock off of the one I just took out, and then I clock onto the one I brought in. Between that time, I clean my area back up. I tell people, I brought your unit in, Lance, into a clean bay. Your unit got my bay messy. I'm not going to, at the end of the day, shut my shop down for a half an hour, $150 an hour. I'm not going to shut it down and clean it. You're going to clean my area back up. I cleaned it once. I'm going to clean it again, and I'm going to stay on your job until I got my area cleaned back up and do that stuff. And I said, that's how you do that. So they never are not clocked on. I tell people you can keep them clocked on to jobs. But again, his thinking is when they're done with the job, they should clock off. And I go, well, how do we recover that time? And he goes, I guess we just don't. And I go, no, we do. You don't clock off of the job you're on until the next job's in your bay. Then you clock off of that one and reclock onto that. That's how it works at a shop. So again, I would tell people again, look at those numbers. And again, I would encourage you to get with Kevin if you don't know. And again, if you have questions, just let Kevin know. And if Kevin doesn't know exactly the answer to it, then Kevin lets you and I and them get on a Zoom meeting and let's talk about the numbers. So let's talk about parts now. So parts. So the number one thing I want to focus on in parts is the gross profit margin. Okay. I tell people again, in service, it's about labor dollars sold. In the parts department, it's not how many dollars of parts did we sell, but how many dollars of parts we sold did we get to keep. See, the mistake that I see people make in dealerships, they go, well, gosh, Bob, we did $1 million in tractor sales. And I go, I don't care. How much of the million, Lance, did you keep? That's the only thing I'm interested in, because we don't pay bills with what we sold. We pay bills with what's left. Does that make sense? So in parts and sales, the only number that matters is your gross profit. So the first thing I want to look at in parts is what's your average gross profit margin. Now, again, you take your total part sales divided by your cost of goods sold divided by your total part sales. That's going to give you your gross profit margin. I would tell you that most of your software is going to be able to do this for you. This is a relatively simple calculation. The question you should say is, well, where should it be at? Okay, well, I will tell you, like Lance, I know your dealership pretty well. You guys ought to be in that 42 to 45% gross profit margin range because I know the products that you sell. So if you sell compact utility tractors and outdoor power equipment, I would expect your average gross profit margin to be in the 42 to 45% range. If you sell big ag and compact tractors, I would expect it to be in the 38 to 42 range. If you sell construction equipment, it's going to be in the 32 to 36 range. If you only sell outdoor power equipment, I expect it to be 48 to 53. Okay, so again, so it depends upon the mix of what you're selling is where it should be. But Lance, since I know your dealership and I know you guys, if I'm talking to Lance, I'm going to say, hey, Lance, we want to see it in that 42 to 45 range. Okay, so that's the magic. I wouldn't want to see it less than 40. Now, most people say, well, gosh, Bob, I'm not getting that much from the manufacturer. And I go, that's right. Okay, so we have to fix that. Okay, we have to make that adjustment, and we do that with a matrixing tool. Okay, so keep in mind, a manufacturer gives you what's called a suggested retail price, manufacturer suggested retail price. Everybody familiar with that term? Okay, and that manufacturer suggested retail price is required by law for the manufacturer to give you. The manufacturer is required by law to give the dealer a manufacturer suggested retail price. How do they come up with that number? Has anybody ever asked that question before? Well, let me tell you how they should come up with it. MSRP should be based upon a part selling 4 times a year. So if this part, Lance, sells 4 times a year, MSRP ought to be a good number. Okay? MSRP should be fine. But there are many times you'll have a part that only sells 3 times a year. And I still want to keep it in stock because I still sell it 3 times a year, right? Well, if you sell it 3 times a year, MSRP doesn't work anymore, right? Because MSRP is based upon 4 turns, not 3 turns. So now we have to say, well, then how do we compensate? How do we adjust for that? And we do it through a matrix. And a matrix, again, and I'm happy, I know some of you guys are not in our programs, but Kevin, I'd be happy to share our matrix with any of your dealers. So we have a matrix that's set up, and it's based upon this is what their MSRP is, and this is how much we're going to mark it up over MSRP to get us to that 42 or 45%. And so a matrix is you don't take every part and mark it up an extra 10% because you're going to be way too low on the low dollar stuff. And by the time you hit $100 or $200, you're way out of the price range. Matrixing is taking a part that sells for a penny to $1, and we mark it up 450%. So if it's a penny to $1 MSRP, we mark it up 450%. If it's $1 to $2.50, we mark it up about 175%. If it's $2.51 to $5, we mark it up about 140%. So as the part price goes up, our matrix gets down. But when we're done, I can end up with about a 42 to 45% average gross profit margin on our parts. So that's called matrixing, okay? So that's one of the things that you're going to do with that. You will find that in your dealership, there are some parts that are very price sensitive. Casey, what would be an example of a price sensitive part in your dealership? Give me an example of what you think a price sensitive part might be. Because Casey, you seem to me like a sensitive guy. That's the reason I asked this question. So Casey, what would be a price sensitive? Casey does not seem sensitive to me at all. 0. Okay.
Thank you. I would say probably filters.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So there are going to be some filters, Casey, that are price sensitive. I always tell people again, oil is price sensitive, batteries are price sensitive, grease is price sensitive. These are things that are price sensitive. So when we do our matrix, we have to exclude our matrix from those items, because if you don't, all of a sudden a quart of oil is going to be $9, where people go like, oh my God, that shouldn't be that high. So in your software, you'll have the ability when you do the matrix to click a little button on that part, and it keeps that part out of the matrix. And it's just whatever MSRP is, that's what it is. So that's what matrix is doing and how you make those adjustments with it. All right. The next thing I want to look at is what's my average transaction value in the parts department. So when I sell a part on the average, how many dollars is on the average ticket that I run through my parts department? So that average basically is what I would do is take all of my parts sales in 2024, and I would take and divide that by all of the sales that I made on parts in both the shop and the calendar sales. So you're going to have a transaction number there, how many transactions were. Take your total part sales divided by your total transactions. And interesting enough, that gives you your average parts transaction value. So let's say my average parts transaction value is, I don't know, let's say $40 just for fun, because I'm in Missouri, we want to keep our math simple. So if my average parts transaction value is $40, and Lance, you say, Bob, I want to grow my parts department by 10% in 2025. Okay. And we know our average transaction value is $40. Lance, every week, if I ran my transaction value for the week, how many dollars of parts did we sell and how many transactions did it take us to sell those parts? Right? I should see every week what should be happening to my average transaction value. So I know it was 40, but if I'm trying to grow my part sales by 10%, what should I be seeing as an owner every week when I run that average transaction value?
I would say an increase by 10%.
By something, right? It may not be 10%, Lance, but I should see it at least moving up, because we know by the end of the year, I need to see that happen. So if that's not happening, Lance, what does that tell us that our parts people are not doing?
They're not increasing anything or stocking enough and have enough in stock to sell.
Yeah, and they're not asking anybody to buy other things, okay? How many people's ever been to a fast food place and they said, you want to make that a large drink? You go, sure, I'll make it a large drink. Okay, well, it's only another 40 cents to make it a large drink. How much profit do they have in sugared water and coloring? A lot. Okay, so it probably cost them 2 cents to get you to pay an extra 40 cents. What does that do, Lance, at the end of the year with 1 million drinks that they sold? What kind of margin does that add to the profit? And I tell people that's what it's all about. What you've got to do is and I'm going to talk about this with your people. If you guys want to do another one, we get into the people side of this. We've got to start cross-selling and upselling, right? I tell people, every parts person, your job is not to give the person the part. They already knew what they needed. Your job is to help them make that part more valuable to them. So if they come in and buy bearings, would it only make sense that we talk to them about grease? If they come in and buy a case of grease, should we not talk to them about hand cleaner? Does anybody know what? Okay. And towels? Absolutely. I tell people again, dear Lord, you can take anything that you sell and easily get a person to add another 10% to it, right? But you've got to do what? You got to ask. Has anybody ever used or bought from a company called Amazon? Is anybody familiar with that company at all? Okay. Ashton's not familiar with it. Ashton, you're lying through your teeth. All right. So Amazon, at the very end, before you finally click pay, check out your shopping cart, it gives you one more option to buy things. It's the very last page, and it said, gosh, Ashton, people like you who bought this, also people like you, Ashton, who bought 25 pounds of beef jerky, also tend to buy fishing rods and hunting knives. Okay. Now, again, most people go, no, I just want the 25 pounds of beef jerky. But what percentage of the people actually go ahead and take Amazon's suggestion and add to their cart? Anybody know what that number is? It's over 30%. 30%. They made last year in 2024, $30 billion in increased sales by having on the last page, Lance, people like you that bought 25 pounds of beef jerky also like hunting knives. Okay. They didn't tell you had to buy it, Lance. They just said, hey, since you're buying grease, I know your hands are going to be messy. Do you need any hand cleaner? Yeah, I'll give me a tube of that. That's $4, wasn't a big deal, but my average transaction value is $40. I just increased it by another 10%, and I got a customer that's going to walk out happy. They weren't upset, and I didn't make them buy it. I just said, hey, we're going to do this, and if I had that happen, those amount of times. So that average transaction value is one. I want to also know what the average transaction time is. How long on the average does it take my parts person to move a person from the parts counter back out the door? What's my average transaction value? Now, your software will not do this. This new Triton software will actually calculate this for you. The moment you stop touching the keyboard, the timer starts to run. And it'll tell you on the average how long it takes the average transaction to happen in your parts store. To do this on your own, you need to be standing there as an owner or a parts person. Look at your watch. If there's 5 people in line, Lance, right? Look at your watch. And when the 5th person that was in line leaves, look at your watch again. take the total time, divide it by 5, and that's going to tell you what your average transaction time is. Now, it's a little clunky to do this with the software that's out there today. This new software is AI powered. It'll do it for you. So you say, well, gosh, why does this matter? Well, let's say, just for fun, that you do an average of 20 parts transactions a day in service and customer counters. That's not a big number, but let's say it's 20. And let's say on the average, we could reduce our transaction time by 2 minutes per transaction, just 2 minutes. So let's say right now it's taking the average transaction time. Let's say it's 12 minutes. I did my calculation and I reduce it to 10 minutes. Okay, so if I do that, 2 minutes of reduction on 20 work orders a day, 5 days a week, 4 weeks a month, 12 months in a year, best guess, how many hours of time did we save? Anybody have a rough guess? And it's more than 100, right? More than 100. It's 191 hours of time we save, 91 hours. I want you to think about that. So 20 transactions total per day in your parts department. That's not a big number, right? I reduced my time by 2 minutes per transaction. I do that 5 days a week, 4 weeks a year, 12 months in the year. And I've reduced my time, my labor time at the parts counter by 191 hours. So Lance, let's say my people say, I don't have time, Lance, to do inventory. Yes, I just gave you 191 hours. Okay, how many of you guys feel like you could do your whole inventory in 191 hours? I'm just saying, when parts people say, you don't get it, Bob, I just don't have the time. You do have the time, right? You're just not efficient with the time that you have. Now, people say, well, how would I reduce my transaction time? Well, the first thing I would do is I would run a parts report that gives me my 50 fast-moving parts, and I would look at those and say, how can I get those 50 fast-moving parts closer to the parts counter, right? That's the first thing I would do. What can I do to get my 50 fastest-moving parts closer to my parts counter? That's the easiest way to reduce your transaction time. Learn how to talk less and move a customer through faster. I see parts people that think that their job is to visit with the customer. I want to visit, Lance, during the slow season. I got no problem you grabbing a cup of coffee, pulling the chair up, and you and I building a relationship. But when we're really busy and we're stacked and packed, Lance, tell me what you need. Let me get it for you. Pay me. Get out of my store. I want to do it in a nice, friendly way. But I can't sit there and have a 15-minute conversation as you explain to me, Lance, that this used to be your grandfather's tractor. And I remember when I was on it as a kid, and I know it's going to be hard to find parts, but would you at least give it a shot and look? And 45 minutes later, you still haven't found the part. Okay, so that's the stuff I tell my parts managers and parts people. And again, if we want to do the next meeting, I want to do some training on that. Then how they can use also chat to look up parts. Chat it's incredible how quickly it can look up parts for you. So that's the one that I want to look at there. Then the last one I want to look at is my fill rate out of parts inventory, my fill rate out of parts inventory. So I have a lot of people, they just say, well, people go on the internet and they look up parts. Well, statistically, it's 15% of the people go on the internet to buy parts. Okay, it's quite a bit, but 85% of the people will come to you to buy a part, but you got to have the part in stock. Would you all agree? So part of what our responsibility is in a dealership, if I'm going to represent LS, I should, I don't know, fairly represent in my inventory the parts that I need and not let them be my parts department. I need to be the parts department. Okay, so you got to go through and say, okay, well, what parts should I stock? I always tell people it's relatively simple. You should stock all the wear parts and the service parts for the models that you sell. You should stock the service parts and the wear parts. And if somebody drives their LS tractor into a tree and tears up the hood and damages the radiator, I ain't going to have that stuff in stock, and they won't expect me to have it in stock. But if somebody comes in for their first 100-hour service, Scott, should they expect I have the 100-hour service kit in stock? I can do it. I tell people there's nothing more embarrassing. Go like, oh, I don't have those filters in stock. And I go, how could you not have filters in stock on the equipment that you sell to do a recommended service? Nobody's ever ordered it before. Doesn't matter. Your job as a parts manager is, Scott, if a new LS tractor comes in, a brand new model, and I'm your parts manager, and Scott, you oversee service. The first thing when the tractor came in, Scott, I would do as a parts manager say, hey, Scott, walk around me this tractor. I want to make sure all the filters on it are filters that we already have. Because sometimes when they put out a new model, Scott, the filters change. And again, the challenge in a parts department puts parts in stock based upon demands, right? And if I have never had a demand, then they go like, well, nobody's ever asked me for it. Why would I stock it? Well, because the new tractors we're selling have it, right? And so that's where the parts manager and the service manager have to get together on any time a new model comes in. And the service manager says, hey, Bob, as a parts manager, here's the new parts that this unit is going to need that you won't currently stock. Then I can go ahead and reach out and get them ordered. So when somebody comes in, I've got it. So fill rate out of stocking inventory. And again, most of your software will do this for you, but it's a simple calculation. And again, if you need help with it, Kevin can help you with it. But you just take your total parts sales, just do it for a month. Take your total parts sales for August, subtract your special orders, emergency orders, and lost sales, and then redivide that by your total parts sales, and it's going to give you your fill rate out of stocking inventory. I take the parts I sold, I subtract special orders, emergency orders, and lost sales. Let's talk about lost sales for a second. I will tell you that most of your parts people do not keep track of lost sales. Why? Because they go, doesn't matter, we don't have it. They bought it from someplace else. Well, again, if we're stocking parts based upon demand, Lance, and I'm not keeping track of the demand, okay, I'm always not going to have that part. And pretty soon people are going to go, well, there's no need to go into hobby because they never have what I need. Quickest way to kill your parts department is not to have the parts that people need when they come in and ask for it. All your software will allow you to keep track of lost sales. And that's what you want. And I would expect your fill rate out of stocking inventory on lines that you sell that are wear and service departments to be 90% or higher. So if I buy a tractor from you and I come in and get a service or a wear part, I would expect 90% of the time you're going to have what I need in stock. If it's an odd part, something that's damaged, I'm not going to expect that. If it's on equipment that you don't sell, they're not going to expect you to have a filter for in Ford in stock, most likely. Okay. They may expect it, but you probably won't have one. So anyway, I'm just going to say, so that's a number that I'm looking for too. Fill rate out of stocking inventory. That number is more important today than your inventory turns. 10 years ago, everybody was focused on inventory turns. We didn't have the internet 10 years ago today. 10 years ago, not like it is today. So I tell people again, we're in a new world today. AI is becoming more and more powerful. Again, we got to embrace that. But the other piece is, again, is the internet. It's easier and easier to go on the internet and look for things. Again, so we've got to know that when they come in, they're going to give you a shot. And they have the right to expect you guys to have a 90% fill rate. 85 to 90, 85 would be the lowest. If you're going to be over 90, then it gets pretty expensive because you got to expand your SKUs. And I can talk about that with service managers, how to expand your SKUs without increasing your parts inventory levels, your dollars. That's kind of our narrow and wide strategy with SKUs. We could talk about that if we meet with your parts people. So those are the ones that I'm looking at from the parts department. Those are just my measurements there. And the last one I want to do is just get, again, on the sales and marketing side. And I put sales and marketing together because, when we look, the numbers tell the story, the people produce the results. And again, marketing and sales really fuel the engine. So there's some numbers that I want to look at on the marketing side. And again, they're going to be some basic numbers. If everybody has a piece of paper, I'm going to have you get a piece of paper out again. And I'm going to have you do some numbers for me. I'm going to show you this so then you can kind of go back and figure this out on your own. And again, if you have any questions or whatever, reach out to Kevin. He can help you with it. So the first thing I want to know is how many leads do I need, right, to hit my sales goal for 2025. So if my goal is to sell 100 LS tractors, how many leads do I need in my pipeline to sell 100 LS tractors? How many do I need to sell 50? So how many leads do I need? So your pipeline is this thing that is filled with leads. Okay, so your job in marketing's job is to keep that pipeline full. What you have to do is tell marketing, I need to have 1,000 leads in my pipeline. Marketing's job is to produce 1,000 leads for your pipeline. Okay, that's marketing's job. I don't want to hear that you clicked on this. I don't care how many times you clicked on crap. I need a lead. I need a name, right? I need to know who you are. I see all these marketing people anymore that get all caught up in this. Well, gosh, Lance, you had 3,000 clicks on that. I don't care. None of them turned into what I'm paying you for, which is a what? A lead. I need a lead, right? This whole crap that all these marketing people talk about today mean nothing because if you can't tell me how many clicks it took to turn into a lead, you're worthless to me. Okay, how many leads do I need for my pipeline? So we're going to do a little experiment here. Just this is going to be fun. I'm going to keep it simple. So the first thing I want you to do on your piece of paper is I want you to write down the number 20. So write down 20. And I want you to put beside 20, I want you to put leads, okay? So what is a lead? A lead is a human being that has a pulse and can fog a mirror. That is all they are. It is a human being that has a pulse and can fog a mirror. That's a lead. Okay, underneath 20, I want you to write down the number 10. Now I want you to write prospects beside 10. So we have 20 leads, and a lead is a human being that has a pulse and can fog a mirror. A prospect is somebody that is qualified to purchase from me. Okay, so the question is, well, what makes a prospect qualified? Well, there are three things that make a lead become a prospect. Number one is they have a need for what you sell. Okay, so if somebody comes in and says, I live in a condo, Scott, and I've always been fascinated with tractors, would you mind showing me around your lot? They don't have a need. Doesn't mean I wouldn't show them around, but they're just a lead. It's a warm body with a pulse. So a prospect is a lead that, number one, has a need. Number two, has money or access to money. Okay. And number three, they're a decision maker. Those are the three things that make a lead become a prospect. Okay. So I had 20 leads that turned into 10 prospects. Underneath the prospects, I want you to write down 5. And beside 5, I want you to walk around demo, quote, or walk around. So I want you to write 5, and then beside that, write demo, quote, or walk around. Okay. So I had 20 leads that turned into 10 prospects. And out of those 10 prospects, 5 of them were interested enough, Lance, to let me do a demo, a quote, or a walk around. Excuse me. Okay. And then underneath 5, I want you to write 1. I want you to put sale beside that. And just for fun, to keep our math simple, I want you to put $40,000. So 1 sale equals $40,000. Okay. So now I have my numbers. Okay. So now I would know if I needed to make 1 sale, Casey, I would need to have how many leads to make 1 sale?
20.
20. Okay. And 1 sale is equal to how many dollars, Casey?
40,000.
$40,000. Now, if I needed to sell $1 million worth of LS tractors, and I knew on the average my sale was $40,000, okay, Casey, how many sales would I need to make at $40,000 a sale to generate $1 million of LS tractor sales? And you can use your calculator.
What do you say?
Yep, 1 million divided by 40,000.
12.
So I need 25. Okay. So I need 25 sales. So based upon 25 sales, then, Casey, how many leads do I need?
100.
So if I took 25 and I multiplied it by 20 leads, that's going to tell me I need how many people in my pipeline, Casey? I need 500 people in my pipeline. I tell people, this is the thing you have to understand about sales. The mistake that I see dealerships make is to say, well, I don't know how I'm going to hit the number. And I go, well, you don't know because you don't have any idea how many leads you need, right? And so your number one thing in sales is to say, well, if I need to sell $5 million worth of stuff, right, then I know I've got to have this many leads in my pipeline. And so I'm driving my marketing people to do what? Get clicks. I don't care about clicks, Lance. I need to click to tell me how many clicks does it take to get a lead. And they go, well, I don't have any way of knowing that. Then I'm going to stop spending money with you. That's the number that I need. If you can't tell me how many clicks turn into a lead, and I'm not saying a lead's going to buy it from me, right, Casey? I'm just saying a lead is what? A lead is a body that has a pulse and can fog a what? I just need you to tell me that. And that's the number one thing that I tell people in sales. You've got to figure out that number. How many leads does it take me to get 1 sale? Now, the easiest way to do this is just to take some time over the next 2 weeks and take a piece of paper. And every time you talk to somebody on the phone, you text somebody, an internet lead comes in, somebody walks in the door, just put a mark on a piece of paper, right? And do that for 2 weeks. At the end of 2 weeks, that's going to tell you how many leads that you had, how many contacts that you made. Every time, just put a mark on a piece of paper. I don't care that you collect their name. I don't care about that right now. Take the total number of marks you put on a piece of paper, and then take the total dollars of sales that you made during that 2-week period of time, divide the total number of marks by the total number of sales, and it's going to tell you what each one of those leads is worth. Because in the reality of our conversation, Casey, as we looked at this, right, a $40,000 sale wouldn't have happened had I not done 5 walkarounds, right? And to get 5 walkarounds, I had to have 10 prospects. And to get 10 prospects, I had to have 20 leads. So Casey, if I took 40,000 and divided by 20, do that for me real quick. I'll just tell you right now, it's $2,000. So each lead, Casey, that came in was worth how much to me in terms of gross revenue? $2,000. Now, if somebody comes up, Lance, and say, well, I can get you leads and they're going to cost you $100 a piece. Okay, does that sound like a lot for a lead now that you know each one's worth $2,000? Bring them on, man. I'd make $1,900 of gross revenue for every lead that comes in. This is the calculation I tell my dealers, because dealers go like, well, I hate to spend that much money. And I go, well, what's the value of a lead? And they go, well, I don't know. Well, calculate it. Just use some math. Just use some math. I tell people, if I knew I was going to make $1,000 for every lead that came in on gross sales, right? $1,000, right? And I had to pay $100 for the lead and my margin was 12%. I'm still $20 ahead, right? Right? Just from a gross profit standpoint, I had $120 of gross profit. It cost me $100 leads. I'm paying for my lead and I still picked up an extra $20, right? I'm just telling you that unless you know that number, then you can't tell me how you're going to hit your sales goal. When people say, how am I going to hit my sales goal? I don't know, because I don't know what your numbers are. It's kind of like batting, and then we're going to wrap it up here tonight. But it's kind of like batting. How many people in here are familiar with baseball? All right. We periodically have a decent team in Kansas City, but we don't currently have one right now. But if a batter has a 400 batting average, what does that mean? What's a 400 batting average mean? Anybody know? So if they say a batter has a 400 batting average, what would that mean? Well, it means statistically that every 10 times at bat, this batter gets on base 4 out of 10 times. A batter that has a 380 batting average gets on base 3.8 times out of every 10 times at bat. So to get on base 4 times low, Casey, I got to get at bat how many? 10. Okay. How good? So keep in mind, a person that's a 400 batter strikes out 6 out of 10 times at bat. A person that is a 400 batter strikes out 6 out of 10 times at bat. How much money would a 400 batter make on a professional baseball team? What would you think? Question, how much would you pay somebody who failed 60% of the time in baseball batting? How much would you pay them?
Realistic, they're probably still making some millions.
Yeah, there's only been in all the history of baseball one player that had a 400 average. Only one. If they were alive today, they would be making probably $30 million a year. $30 million a year. And by the way, where would you put them in the batting lineup? Well, I don't know. Let's put them number 4, because 4 out of 10 times they'll knock a runner in. You guys ever seen the movie Moneyball? Right? It's all about averages, right? Right? We're not going for home runs here. All we're trying to do is do what? I'm just trying to get one sale after another sale after another sale. We got to get on base. We got to get up to bat. I know using my numbers that if I get up to bat 20 times, every time I get up to bat, if I get up to bat 20 times, I'm going to end up with a $40,000 sale. Every time I get up to bat, in my example, you generated $1,000 worth of gross revenue. So now when I know what I need to hit, it's easy. I just got to do the calculations. So anyway, well, I appreciate it. I'm gonna wrap it up, guys. I really appreciate you having it on here. So I'm going to leave it up to Kevin. You reach out to your people. I would love to do another one of these. I'd like to really talk about the people part of the side, because the people get the results. It'd be a great one if you could have your people on them, service managers, parts managers, salespeople like that. And then what I'd like to do is just do one, kind of a third one, just on sales and marketing, and talk about some things that we see. We have a marketing element to our company also. And I tell my people all the time, I don't ever want you to hear tell a dealer about clicks. I never want to hear it come out of your mouth. Talk to them about the leads. That's what that works for. And so we have a lot of success with that, because we focus on the right stuff. So I want you to get with Kevin. And if you say, guys, I think I would like to hear Bob one more time, but not two more times. That's fine. Okay. So anyway, so I'm going to leave it up to you. But number one, Kevin, I appreciate it. Thanks a million. for giving
Absolutely.
me an
This has been
opportunity
great, Bob.
to
Thank you
meet-
so much.
to
Guys,
meet
I'm
with
going to
you.
send you links afterwards to the recording. Bob, you'll share it with me once it's
Yep,
finished
I will. As soon as
I'll put some meeting notes together afterwards and maybe some timestamps. There's a lot of nuggets buried in there. So I'll pull those out, make it really easy for you guys to review these notes, and then I'll collect your feedback later. Tell me what you'd like to hear next. We've got plans for 2, and we'll put them in whatever order you want.